And Brock Covington, welcome to the show, man. First off, it's one of the coolest names I think that you could have. Just Brock Covington. I don't know why. It sounds like a superhero in a movie, and so it's awesome, man. And you kind of have superhero results, man. You're an ultra runner, which means you run 50+ mile races, and which is just bananas. I've run a marathon myself, so I can only imagine what it's like to push yourself like that. And I know at some point it's calling me to do this. Speaking of which, you have a training program. You've to say back, you've built a business, sold it, and now
Mhm.
you've started another one with a co-founder, a training supplements and whatnot. So all this entrepreneurship, business ownership, exercise, ultra running, these are all just magical words to our listeners. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs listening love exercise, man. So Go Switchback is the company name that you've built, the second one that you're building. And yeah, we can't wait to get into this episode, man. If you could just give us some background, so we'd love to hear it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it as far as I'm just a man that dabbles in probably too many things. So I fell in love with fitness from a young age in high school, from with bodybuilding and all that. That led me down a track of personal training, opening up my own gym. So dropping out of university at that time around the pandemic, opening the gym, selling it, moving across the country from Virginia to Colorado. As you mentioned, it got connected with my business partner Jeremy Miller, and I just had that itch to start another business after selling one. I just felt like I needed some kind of baby to kind of foster and nourish like that. And yeah, I do a lot of things, whether it's ultra running, lifting, reading, specialty coffee. I think I'm just a guy that lives a life through a lot of curiosity and like dabbling in a lot of things.
Hmm. The first thing that pops in my mind is, do you have any kids, Brock?
No, do not have kids.
Okay, yeah, because I like everything that I'm hearing. I'm like, man, because I don't have any kids either.
Mhm.
How old are you?
24.
24. Okay, so I'm curious with you, like, what did you do before starting the business, right? And you're an ultra runner. You got into opening up your business, which is aligned with what it is that you like doing. How did this all come to fruition? What did you do? Let's pull back the layers a little bit. Like your, not only your childhood, but maybe your teen years. Like what
Mhm.
prompted you? What motivated you? What inspired you to start up your first business? And was that your first time to do something, or did you work for somebody prior to that?
I technically worked for someone like throughout high school. So I worked at a local gym that I was going to, and I worked there as a technically as a called fitness consultant. Essentially, I would help clean up and talk to members and assist as needed, get people spots, things like that. And so that was a way to make extra money, pay for my car in high school, and all of that. Then I did work as a personal trainer as well at the university I was attending. So technically, I was working for people there, but essentially in the midst of college and after, it's always been self-employed. And um, even to kind of backtrack a little bit, I feel like my path is fairly relatable and approachable in a way that I feel like a lot of people could do it. But at the same time, I also, when I reflect upon it, I think it is a quite unique and kind of obscure way to get about entrepreneurship. And why I say that is because I was a very curious kid in the same way that I kind of referenced I am now, in which I would dabble in a lot of things, whether it was teaching myself Photoshop, illegally downloading some of these softwares and like learning them, and for video editing and graphic design and things like that. So I was kind of developing these skills that people will go to school for on a fairly basic but up to intermediate level at a young age through having fun and looking at tutorials, whether it's like keyframing a lightsaber effect and Final Cut Pro or something like that. And through that, I was able to develop skills that later led to probably my most profitable business that I don't speak about too much. That is the primary driver is a video editing business. So I do video editing for real estate agents across the country, and I've done that since about 18 or 19. And that has kind of funded a lot of these other passion projects that have fortunately been profitable as well, but have been funded through a more stable, consistent source possibly.
Man, there's so many questions, man. I don't even know
I
where to
know.
start.
We're gonna go over
Building
today.
that gym, let's start there. Because
Uh-huh.
that you started that on your own, and there's all the challenges of building that yourself, but you had some experience from kind of being in that world. But then you
Yeah.
built it up to the point to where you sold it. Man, I'd love to hear kind of that story. was selling it the overall plan, or did it just come to, you know what, I want to do something different, or what kind of led to that experience? And that's a lot of questions there, but yeah, just the process,
Yeah.
the thought process.
Well, I'll kind of piecemeal it a little bit. I think sometimes you chase a goal, and then the goal or the dream ends up being different in reality. And I think that's what owning a gym is very much like for most people that get into the ownership of any kind of fitness space like that. And so, like most people, I thought, oh, owning a gym would be sweet. Buy my own equipment, build this community, build it out. It'd be great. And there's plenty of perks to it, and I did love it, and I would never replace that at all in my life. And in a way, the allure of it still draws at me that I would like to do something similar in the future. But it's full of, especially when you're on a you know, either me or me and my wife managing everything. It's very stressful. You're there every single day from, sun up to sundown. And I didn't, I quickly, within like 6 or 8 months, recognized that this wasn't what I wanted to do forever, that I would either need to sell it, worst scenario, close it and sell the equipment, or hire people out. And that was one of the big takeaways, to not going too much of a tangent, was learning to delegate and hire people early on and have a plan for that. Um,
But if you
but I was
could,
young,
man, that
naive. No, go ahead.
that's exactly what, man, that's what we love to, what you just said there, man. A lot of people, that's a power skill right there. You know, that what did you learn through that delegation and learning, because you were forced to, you know,
Yeah.
what did you learn that's, oh man, I have to, this is terrible, and then you have to get good
Uh-huh.
at that, and obviously you did. You know, what did you
Yeah.
get from that?
Like I said, I was naive going into it. Not that I thought I could do everything, but that I just had the attitude and the personality to try and do everything. And as I mentioned, I was also still doing my video editing while I was owning the gym as well, so that I could kind of just reinvest the gym profits into the business, buy more equipment, and we quickly were doubling the poundage we had in the gym and buying more machines. So that was great. But I was in my office editing, I don't know, 5 to 8 hours a day, while also someone comes in, I got to pop up, give them a tour, try and sell them a membership, clean the bathrooms. I was just stretching myself too thin, to the point where there was parts of the business, whether it was recruiting new members or maintaining certain things, that just weren't getting fulfilled to the standards that I dreamt of, perhaps. And so, reflecting upon it, I think I just would be I need to be comfortable hiring on people and knowing that they aren't going to do the exact job that I would do, but that doesn't mean that it's not uh, still done properly or not done to meet a certain standard. I think that's the hard part, is knowing that you're going to have to trust other people, whether they are business partners or employees. So and just let that go, because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy and run the business into the ground. So that's something I've kind of taken that lesson and led that into Switchback, where I do have a partner where we split a lot of obligations, but even to that extent, we know clearly when to outsource things, whether it's web development or label design or certain things like that, or content creation. We know when to outsource, because both he and I both handle a lot of things concurrently with Switchback. And again, if we try and take on too much, we'll just drown.
Yeah. I'm curious with you going back, you said you worked for somebody in high school, and a lot of our listeners listening to this, entrepreneurs, business owners, sales, they're either thinking about starting a business, or they're in business, and they're typically in that 0 to 5 year mark. And with you, that first, like, yes, I'm gonna start my own gym. Well, myself, like building these businesses that I have over the years, I've learned, and coaching clients, I've coached clients for the last couple of years. I've learned that 9 times out of 10, we just jump into things. We're like, what is it, right? As an entrepreneur and
Mm,
business owner, we're like, squirrel, shiny new object. I want to jump into it, right? And then next thing you know, it's like, okay, all eyes on me. I'm getting judged. I got to buy the equipment. I got to, whatever it may be for that business. And so then you pick your head up in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you've neglected all these things around you in these different areas of life. And so maybe you resonate with some of this stuff that I'm saying, going back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years prior to starting that business. What would you have done differently? Based on what you know now?
I think I did a decent job of budgeting and planning, and I obviously did the work to save the money. I didn't take out any loans for the gym too, so that
Good for you.
in my mind, it was a position of maybe not the best financial decision and risk to do the business, but for me, it felt like, well, at least if it falters, I don't owe any bank or anybody. I just, ate it myself. So I think I did a decent job with that. The only thing I think I would have done more so is planning for after the business is profitable. I feel like I did a good job of planning to get to the point of starting the business in the first, maybe 6 to 12 months. But it was like that next stage of scaling that I didn't really plan for or expect. That again, when it comes to the delegating or hey, let's say this actually turns out and works as well as you imagine, do you want multiple locations or is the lease that you have opportunity to expand into other suites, and like what does that look like, how would you pace that, and figuring that out. I didn't have that again experience to do that.
Did you
Fair
know
point.
what you want did you know what you want your business to do for you? Like when you started, you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy the weights. I'm going to, we're going to sit in here. We're going to do the one-on-one tours. Did you know what you wanted your business to do for you and your wife at that
Yes,
time?
I had it mapped out pretty well to whether I knew exactly like what kind of equipment we like needed to start with, especially coming from the fitness space. I knew what equipment people wanted. I knew like what were the mandatories that we could, get to open, and then okay, some of these nice machines and things like that we can get further down the line. And I knew generally like what exact demographic we were catering towards, and who we were for, who we weren't for. So I had a lot of the business mapped out. I think it was just thinking beyond like the clouds and thinking kind of more towards the stars, I guess, to draw some analogy of like those kind of next steps. And I don't, I'd have to like think on it harder whether it's like I didn't have any idea for that, because I had like maybe vague dreams, but I didn't have it structured. I don't think you need step by step always, but you do need some kind of rough outline that guides, like guiding principles essentially of like where you
Because you,
want
you start a
the business
business
to go.
because not to just be in business. You start it because the business is going to give you something. It's going to give you a life that you would want to live.
Hmm.
And just from the mastermind that we have, like listening to and talking to other business owners, a lot of time they just get the business going and they don't actually know what it's going to do for them,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so having that mapped out beforehand, I was curious, did you have a mentor or coach kind of, or it sounds like you just totally muscled it yourself, which is amazing, man. You started it with your own money, which is fantastic that you had that foresight to do that, and then you got yourself through, you experienced it, you learned it. Let's say if you took you today and went and coached you that just started day one, what would that experience been like for you?
A couple things come to mind. I to answer your original question, I didn't really have any direct mentor. I had some individuals that would give a helping hand or advice, um, especially with like okay, even something as simple as putting your money into like a money market while you're saving and not trying to put it into something that's more high risk. Because if I would have done that, again, I opened the gym around 2020. My savings for the gym could have just tanked. Um, so little things like that were helpful, and just having people believe in you, especially at a young age, is hard because that was a challenge I faced a lot. Was trying to get a lease not only during such a precarious time, but also at a young age. I think people are just not interested in taking a risk on someone like that. And how I would mentor myself, it's hard to think extemporaneously about it in the moment, but it would just be knowing to delegate early and often. So like having that even before you open the doors, thinking about okay, at what point cash flow wise, or at what point in the business, at what stage do you start hiring people? What does that look like? How many people is that? What jobs are they fulfilling? And again, like what like you guys were referencing, having uh, that focus on okay, what do you want this business to do for you, because that's an interesting situation too with the gym. Was it was very much a passion project. It was something that I love to do, and the older I've gotten, although I'm still quite young, is this I've had more of acceptance of the idea that what you do for work doesn't have to always be what you love to do, and, and what your passion is, like the cliche, never work a day in your life if you like love what you do. I think it's a little overstated, and it's not always the case. I think having that distinction is sometimes nice. But there can be a balance. So just being honest with yourself, and to some extent, until you do it, you won't know what it feels like. There's another gym that opened up about the same exact time, with a similar demographic and strategy as us, that is, still under the same ownership, and they've opened other locations. And I think that owner had more of a clear drive and vision to do this long term, and that be their identity, be a gym owner. My identity, again, if you scan and investigate in my personality, I don't think I like to be singled out under one identifying marker, whether it is runner or lifter, gym owner. So I think reflecting on that now, it would make sense that I wouldn't want to be fixated and stuck in a specific business or gym for 2-3 decades.
You take yourself back to right before you're like, I'm going to start my own business? What would that version of you, Brock, need to hear on a podcast, see it on YouTube, hear it from a friend? What would you need to hear right then and there to get yourself involved in group coaching or a mentor, that with somebody that has already done what it is that you want to do and where you want to go? What would that version of Brock need to hear at that point in time? Hey, you got this mentor, this coach, this grouping, this coaching community. They have been where you want to go, right? They can point this stuff out. They can help paint a picture for you so you don't go through the trials, the tribulations, and the mistakes that every entrepreneur and business owner goes by themselves, alone. What would
I don't
that
know
version need to hear?
Well, if younger Brock wasn't so stubborn, I think he might he might listen to something like this. And I think it would just be finding someone or a group, or whomever it is that you're referencing, that is approachable, that is willing to help, and trying to not come at them and just ask a bunch of questions, but open the conversation, and come in a way that you can provide mutual benefit. I think uh, Instagram, social media, all this or granted us the opportunity to kind of reach out to people like yourselves, or like a Alex Hormozy, these different people, and try and ask them questions. But you don't just want to be self-centered and say, what can you do for me, but also try and leverage some kind of benefit. Or at least, here's the biggest thing, is if someone's going to give you advice, you need to follow up on it. You need to follow through and actually do it. And follow it up with action. So you need to be willing to follow it up with action, and come in that mutual benefit approach, I would say. Um, that hopefully that kind of answers or guides your question a little bit.
Is a great answer, man. What was the sale like? Not everybody gets to build a business and sell it, profitable.
Yeah.
But, a lot of businesses start and they just kind of, well, most businesses don't make it. Right? I think it's
Mhm.
like 1% out of after 10 years are still going. So you were able to sell this. Like, what was that process? How did you find the buyer, and did they find you, or what was that like?
The sale was very like serendipitous, because we had already, my wife and I had made the decision. I think like maybe 14 months into owning the gym, we're like, we kind of want to live elsewhere. We're young enough. We're kind of in the same mindset with the business. If we're gonna move or take a risk or make a change, let's do it earlier rather than later. And we were eyeing Colorado, and we're like, that would be great. And I was getting more into trail running, so we had this idea of moving, and went and checked out Denver and Colorado Springs in that January, and ended up signing a lease. And the idea was, by that time I'd already, so I didn't delegate, but one thing I did do a good job of quite early on is setting up the gym to be as self-sufficient as possible, and automated as possible. So what I did is we leveraged a 24-hour door access key system, and I set up online membership that people could buy and sell, and day passes that people could buy and scan the QR code and get into the building. So some of these things I was able to do over time, and also cut down the hours that I was technically like on staff, even though I was often still in the building. And so we got to the point where, okay, we want to move. I think we already have a lot of things automated. I think we can manage this from afar. We just need a kind of accountable manager for when things don't work out, but, almost be virtually unstaffed, except for, a handful of days, handful of hours. and let this thing kind of run itself for the most part. Because again, I didn't need it to be insanely profitable because I was already profiting from my other business at the time. So it was again from a place of passion rather than pure profit. And so that was the plan. And then as it got closer, I fortunately stumbled upon a buyer who he was setting up to do a powerlifting meet in our gym in the fall. And he heard we were selling. He was, oh, like, what's going to happen at the gym? And we got talking, and he happened to own a quite big gym and successful gym for about a decade up in Northern Virginia. And was curious about buying. And so like we weren't initially trying to sell. He wasn't initially necessarily trying to buy, but he was curious, and they were looking to expand at some point. And we started the conversation. It made a lot of sense for both of us. And within like a month and a half, we got something written up and signed. And so it almost worked out in a way that feels like it was orchestrated. But so that was the process. And it worked out again very fortunately. Just like owning the business, I had no clue how to sell a business. So again, trying to just keep the ducks in a row and make sure that it worked out well, and make sure it was done before we moved. And then the biggest thing is again, like doing your own due diligence with the individual you're trying to sell to, make sure they are capable of buying the gym, making sure they are reliable, making sure that when you work with them and communicate with them, things are going well. Because that's, a big process after selling, was making sure that the members in the gym are still taken care of. And there was a transition period where things weren't taken care of to the standards that I would have liked, mainly on like the cleanliness standpoint. But a lot of that wasn't entirely his fault, because it's hard to drive down from Northern Virginia. It was like a 2-hour drive, and then take care of it himself while also trying to figure out how to hire people in this area it's very new to him. So it took a while, but now the gym's thriving. They actually have some big kind of across the country affiliation with like Rogue Fitness right now, some powerlifting meets. And the guy that's actually like managing the gym is named Ray Williams. He's this big like all-time record holder for like powerlifting, or at least was at a time a couple years ago. So it's funny how things kind of turned up.
You were what, 22 when you sold it?
22, yeah.
Dang, dude, you've experienced so much. You're 24 now. It's like we could be speaking to a 50-year-old right now. The experience that you've got, man, it's really impressive, man. And congratulations for selling that, and then starting
Yeah,
your
thank you.
other business, which we'll get into. But which I'm
Yeah.
dying to ask, but I think Sean was going to ask him.
Yeah. So I don't think we've mentioned it and brought it up yet. I know we talked about it early and often, was ultra running, right? And so that's anything for the listeners, that's anything over 26.2 miles, correct, Brock?
Yeah.
So, man, I know me and Ewan know a little bit about that. And I'm curious with you, man. One of the beautiful things about it is, because we talk to a lot of individuals, we have guests and friends in our community, and you're very unique, right? And a lot of the things that you're saying resonates. I know Ewan can probably attest to this as well. It resonates with what we do here at Level Up and Live, right? In living the life that you want to live, designing the life that you want, right? Here you are today. You've got a business, you got a partner, you're on a podcast, you're ultra running. I call it lifestyle entrepreneur, right? Designing the life you want to live. So for somebody listening to this, and because we preach that and teach that, if you follow us on our social media channels, we're big on exercising and nutrition. First off, why do you run ultra runs, right? Why, like, that's the number one question. Why do you do what you do, right? I get that asked all the time. Why do you run a marathon? Why are you running? Why are you exercising, right? And we all have our different reasons. But what is your why for doing the ultra? And then how is that aligned with building your business? How do you align it with building your business?
Well, it's not because it's fun the whole time. I can
Amen to that,
tell you
brother.
that. Yeah. It's I kind of got into it like a lot of people got into running a little bit around the pandemic time, because gyms were closed for a bit, and I was curious. I was starting to see some other lifters getting into the running space, and I recognized, I can actually still do this without losing all my muscle. So I got into marathons, did my first marathon, and I discovered how empowering it was to literally have such an objectifiable progress like metric to look at of,
Yes.
okay, mile 1 versus, okay, now I ran 2 miles, now I ran 10 miles. And like you can literally like see that. And it's such a simple but effective metaphor for life, looking at it in that way. And also with distance running specifically, because I'm not fast at all, and I tend to slack on, I feel like, speed work more than I should. But distance running was more of an allure to me because of the mental component, the mental side of things. I felt like it was an opportunity to, again, test my limits, and I gained a lot of pride and self confidence from the ability to push myself further and kind of hold myself to a standard of a distance I've done before, knowing that if I quit before that, it's me quitting. It's not my body not being capable.
Mm.
So I just found it really empowering. I also found it to be a great resource for solitude and stripping myself away from
Mm.
distractions of work or social media or my phone, because lifting, you have your rest periods and you have your phone out sometimes and you have your, music. But a lot of times when I'm running, it's no headphones, it's time alone, especially on the trails. It's quite peaceful and away from it all. So it really just strips me out of a chaotic world.
Do you
I'll
have some of
wrap
your
it up real
best
quick.
ideas, like some of your
Yeah.
problem solving? That's what I did not expect when I started doing my daily training.
Hmm.
I'm running 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 mile days, back to back
Yeah.
days. And I suddenly realized at the end of the runs, I'm like, I totally solved that problem. And I had this amazing idea that's going to super,
Yeah.
accelerate us. Did you get a lot of that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's why I usually try and not run with headphones. Is not. It's definitely not a tough guy thing, and it's not always preference, but it's more so an opportunity to think through things, because you do have like less buzz and chatter going around when you're there, and like the monotony of step after step almost isolates, it gives you a bit of tunnel vision where you can think through problems, or reassess your life, or what you really want, or where things are going headed, and all that. And then how I fell into ultra running was just because it's like the next kind of extension of marathon. It's like the next big thing, and trail running specifically is a lot more enjoyable than just hitting asphalt day after day. And those are
Amen.
quite boring. And,
Yep.
it's better for slower runners. It's better for hikers and things like that. And it's pretty badass to see people run 50 or 100 miles. So I think that just drew me in.
How many have you done,
I've
ultra?
done 4 50 milers and then 250Ks, and I have a 100 miler in 30 days. That's terrifying
Wow,
me.
man, you
Yeah.
feel ready?
Ready enough. Ready as I'll be. So we'll see.
Yeah. What kind of mileage are you putting in each day to get that engine?
Right now, I'm running 5 days a week. I actually hired a friend of mine as a coach back in October. I haven't had a coach before then. And he's slowly been working me up. And really, how I trained before the coach and definitely now is more so time on feet. So, like, mileage can kind of vary a little bit. But, like, I'm actually kind of picking it back up now because I had a race recently. But my big mileage before that 50 miler was something like, I think, like low 60 miles, and then it was about like 11 and like a half hours on feet. Um, and then and I think about like 6,000 feet elevation gain. So a lot of my running right now is focused on time on feet, a lot of elevation gain, and the miles comes with that, of course, too. Um, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Take. I'm curious with you, man. Like, kind of a two-part question. You're building a business. You have a partner. So, and you're working on delegating. There's a book. I don't know if you want to write this down, or even our listeners. We've talked about it numerous times. Who, not how. And so, basically, right. A lot of times, us as business owners, entrepreneurs, are like, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we do this? And typically, we're the ones filling in that role. And who is allows you to kind of have that open mindset, abundance mindset. Like, who can I delegate this to? But my question with you is doing this training for a 100 miler, running a business, having a partnership, you got a wife, you got all these different things going in. What is your day like? What does your daily routine look like? How do you fit this into your day, like training? Because when we know training, right? 60 minutes,
Yeah.
90 minutes, 120 minutes. How do you structure your day to where you can fit these things in that are important to you, that are your passion, that are your love, that what allows you to come alive as a business
Yeah.
owner as well?
So I give a quick disclaimer, although this will apply to some people because I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this, and it's the primary audience. But uh, what I'm about to say is very particular to and afforded only to people that kind of can control their schedule. But I'll say at the same time, though, whether I have kids or whether I worked another job, I would still take mostly the same exact approach. And that approach is just figuring out what are the non negotiables in your life that give you fulfillment and that have to get done, and figuring out the kind of pyramid of prioritization. So I know that like if my wife and my relationship together is in, peril or in disarray, everything else could be fine, but it's going to be coated in a storm of shit. Like if my training's going fine, but my life at home is in a wreck, it's not going to be working well. So I take
Yeah.
care of those things that have to be in place, and kind of same thing with business. If I feel like my personal goals with fitness or my own body's health, my sleep, my energy levels are crap, then I'm not going to be a good business owner. I'm not going to be getting things done and all of that. So I figure out what kind of are those key Jenga piece puzzles or key Jenga pieces, basically, that if stripped away, the tower is going to fall down, and I kind of structure off that. So I figure out what I have to train for the day. Like this morning, I had like an hour lift. This evening, I have an hour and a half run. So I figure out those in my schedule and kind of block them off. Like, okay, 4:30 today, like work is cut off no matter what. I have to go out there and train and get that done because I have a big goal next month. And if I fail that, like I'm only gonna have myself to blame, and et cetera.
Yeah.
And then as far as other routines that I structure in that, again, fill my cup, make me feel my best. Morning routine's a big one for me. I get up 3:50 a.m. It's just a time that I've kind of settled on and really like the peace and the quiet and getting up that early. And I know I'm more productive in the morning. So the more daylight I have, the more I can be at my best. And get up, breakfast, big specialty coffee guy. So I brew a nice pour over. I sit and I can read for about 45 minutes to an hour. So I feel like I get some sense of alone time, some sense of deep thinking and rumination in the morning. I get some, personal development as well. Then I work out, I can start my day, and then I get to like work for the, majority of the day. And so there are these certain, again, mandatory or fixed blocks in my day that I make sure stay fixed. And then I figure out the times of the day that I can kind of manipulate and move around. Like if, okay, well, we have this podcast right now. I don't normally have this every day, of course. So I need to plug this in a time that I can push off some work until later in the evening and figure that out and just condense things. And sometimes I've found too that if I fit in, like, especially working from home, I have to, and I'm sure maybe you guys have found this as well. It doesn't do me good to try and power through 6 hours straight of work. I need to take little breaks and spurts. And honestly, when I take, let's say, a 20, 30-minute break, I come back and I'm more productive than trying to push through the drudgery of it all in one go. So sometimes, like, you add in these things that seemingly take away, like you have less hours to work, but you're more productive in those hours and you get the same amount done, kind of like a 4-hour work week type strategy.
Yeah, man, that lines right into, and you said earlier, you don't often get to put your passion in with what it is that you do, but going into Go Switchback, I mean,
Mhm.
you're really tying, your love of running into your training programs, and then I saw you have the electrolyte supplements, so you're kind
Mhm.
of in the supplement world as well, which is something you take on a daily basis. I'm sure with your runs and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
transitioning from your gym into taking all that business knowledge that you've had, like that experience, and applying it into to Go Switchback. How have you found that making this experience, I don't know what the right word is, smoother, better,
Mhm.
more streamlined, or you see a bigger outcome, or yeah, take us through that experience of starting the second business.
I think taking the experience from the gym, the biggest thing again was knowing when to delegate, and also going into this business with a partner was very different than, your wife is still a partner and was girlfriend at the time, but like I knew she wasn't going anywhere. I had her like by my hip, basically the whole time. Versus owning a gym with someone you've only, or owning a Switchback with someone I've only known for about a year and a half, and someone that's in a different state and also in a completely different industry and consumer packaged goods. It's very different than having like a physical location, a gym. So there's a lot to leverage from that experience and that time owning the gym, but there's also probably just as much, if not more, completely new frontier for me. But the biggest thing is just delegating, like I mentioned. Even though like Jeremy and I, as content creators and the things that we do, we are capable of creating like great content and graphics and things like that. But time wise, we know that we'll run ourselves to the ground. So delegating those things, as I mentioned, and also I think one of you brought it up earlier, but having that ability of trust with someone, and I think that's a big thing with if you are going into business with a partner. Is I look less at how much money they're bringing in or perhaps even like the experience they have, although that can be a value metric to like look at. But what's their personality like? Like, what's driving them? What do they hope to get out of the business? How do you guys work through problems? How do they handle being under pressure, or what is their composure in a disagreement? And that's been something that we've been able to address, and it's worked out really well for us. Is we both have a lot of similarities, but we have plenty of differences too between Jeremy and I, and we've been able to address those in a really mature and productive manner whenever it comes to, because especially when it's just two of you, a 50-50 vote doesn't actually make any decision. So you have to know when to yield and know when to be assertive on something that's really important to you. And um, yeah, to wrap
True
that up,
words,
I would just
man.
say it's been a very much a new ride though.
You'd mentioned delegation a handful of times now, and I know a lot of individuals probably listening to this struggle with delegation. I struggle with a lot of things. Delegation isn't one of them. That's like my superpower. God give it to me. It's like I'm delegating. If it's a light bulb need changed, I'm
Mm,
delegating. If it's whatever it may be, I may try to figure out how to do it in the heat of the moment, but then it's only a matter of time before I'm who can I hire to do this, right?
yeah.
I'm curious with you, what would be somebody that does struggle with delegation? What would be one tip that you could give them that they could use in their own business, in their own life to kind of help free up that time so they can avoid that failure in their own life?
The advice I would give someone would be the same advice I guess I'd give my younger self and even myself today is to not overvalue the money you're saving by trying to do something yourself,
Yeah.
because your job as the owner is to be doing the creative work, to be planning the next steps, to be handling those kind of big, ambiguous jobs, not the kind of tedious jobs that can be handed off or delegated, as we talked about. So I would just say don't overstate the pennies you're pinching and the dollars that you think you're saving by not delegating, and just think about what you could turn and roll that free time that you would be able to gain into for your business.
Do you and your partner, do you have the same skill sets, or are you good at one thing and you're chalk and cheese and he's good at the other? Which is, Sean is a maximizer.
Hmm.
He just can get things done. And I'm talking about, like, we've done many personality tests, like part of the thing that we do with our mastermind groups, and help people understand themselves better. What are they good at? Like ideation, strategy. That's my bag. Like just thinking long periods of time and find out what is the one domino that knocks all the other ones down. And Sean's strengths are just, man, he just gets things done. He's very good at
Yeah.
delegating, and so we partner up well with that. Do you guys have that same kind of relationship, or do you both kind of have a hybrid side of both?
We have things that overlap, but I think for the most part, Jeremy is a good face of the brand. He's a good social, figure. He's out in the community. He's good at running these stuff. He's got good relationships, and so he's very good too. Again, with content creation and dreaming up that stuff. Um, I definitely am happy to take on the administrative stuff and the management of things, and not always maybe creating what has to get done, or handling that all by myself, but making sure that things get done, following up with us with stuff, handling all the emails, and just keeping track of deadlines. So yeah, we haven't really analyzed it too much. And again, there's I'd say more that we overlap with than completely like one side of the business handle those kinds of things. Um, but yeah, we definitely have kind of figured out quickly who's better at one thing than another. And again, it comes back to just trusting the other to make sure that they're going to get that done,
How
whether
did
it
y'all
is
meet?
setting up SMS. We met through social media. I had seen he had a really great ultra running documentary, and I gave him big props on it, and we chatted a bit, and I actually brought him on my podcast, and he was like my first guest, and it's funny enough, like I messed up the the audio with it, so we actually did like a double podcast the same day. So fortunately, I got through that embarrassment with him on my first episode, and through that we chatted more and more, and then heading into 2023. We were texting almost daily, getting on like plenty of video calls, and we actually were starting. I had this idea to start a like a running coaching AI app that was gonna you plug in your runs or you upload them, and it modifies your program and prepares you for a race. But we quickly realized like that was just above our intellectual,
That sounds in
bandwidth
depth.
and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then because of both of our experience with supplement companies, not working directly like within them, but having good of awareness of it, we thought this would be a great kind of chance for us to develop Switchback and leverage our relationships and develop this community and grow it into a brand that we felt like hadn't been established yet in the running industry. So yeah, that's how we kind of met.
Very cool.
Man, I tell you what, we've done a lot of episodes now, Brock, and this is probably one of the coolest episodes and the fastest episodes to date, brother. And I'm being transparent about behind that, man. And we're already at 40-minute mark, so we'll wrap things up. But man, we really appreciate you being here today. We really appreciate your time, energy, and effort with us. And so we both know, like in the realm of business ownership and entrepreneurship, there's a million things that we could have said yes to, and you said yes to this show, and rest assured, I know there's going to be individuals out there listening to this that are fresh in their business or even seasoned in their business, and they're going to hear one or multiple things that you said, and it's going to make an impact on their life, their business, and they're going to go apply it in their own life. So really appreciate you, man, opening up today and just being vulnerable, just being your authentic self. And we wish nothing but the best. So to wrap things up, 2 final questions for you. With all that being said, how can our listeners, how can our audience, how can we support you here at Level Up and Live?
The good thing is I'm the most famous Brock Covington, at least so far. So you can just kind of Google my name and find most of my stuff. But Instagram is at Brock Covington. YouTube, same thing as well. You can look me up. I haven't been as active on my channel right now. The podcast and channel has been a little bit paused or dormant just as I train for this race. Again, just knowing my limits. But when content kind of resumes, you can find it there. And you can find Switchback at goswitchback.co. And on Instagram, I believe it's go.switchback. And yeah, grab some great electrolytes, all natural,
Which
no
flavor do
sugar
you
in there.
prefer, Brock? Of your
I
two?
I like Orange Dream. We have a third flavor dropping basically like late this week, if not early next. And we just got travel sticks in that are launching 2 days from now, Thursday. So
My
probably by the
next
time this
electrolytes
episode's
will be
out.
from y'all. I'm going to buy my next.
Perfect. Yeah, let me know
Yeah.
what you think. Yeah, I mean, again, 1,000 milligrams of sodium. A lot of electrolytes are underdosed and overpriced. So
Yes.
we pride ourselves in making sure you're getting a healthy dose, especially if you're exercising in the ways that us three are. And again, like I said, like no calories, no sugar, all that junk's out of it. So
Awesome.
yeah, give them a try.
I'm looking forward
Awesome.
to it. I'll get the orange.
Yeah.
And we'll put the links in the show notes as well. So for easy access. Second and final question, my friend, is what does Level Up and Live mean to you?
Yeah, I think it just means living a life of intention and constant development. So looking at ways that not always looking at the big jumps, the big leaps, perhaps that you can take in your life, trying to make a switch within a week or a day, just from something you hear in a podcast, but taking those little steps, those little steps that turn into miles, again, to draw an ultra running analogy there. And again, continue to work on improvement throughout your life. I think that's what life really comes down to, is just self-improvement over time and constantly learning.
Beautiful.
Love it, man. Beautiful. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we end every episode with saying level up and live, man. So we just really appreciate you coming on, man. And it's been a great conversation. Like Sean said, we could have kept on going, had many more questions, but we'll maybe get back together again some other time, man. But yeah, level up and live, man. Thanks, Brock.
Level Up and
Yeah.
Live.
Thank you guys for having me on.